Buenas tardes a todos, bienvenidos nuevamente. Un anuncio que quiero hacerles es que en el Salón Tecnológico se va a llevar a cabo ahora una actividad sobre estadísticas de fecundidad y nacimiento. Originalmente sí iba a ser una actividad distinta, pero ha sido sustituida por una de igual o mejor calidad. Así que los invito a que los que deseen pasar por esa actividad lo hagan también. Los estudiantes están bienvenidos también a que pasen allá. Bueno, después del almuerzo, que estaba muy bueno, estaba excelente, estamos listos para continuar. Y como les mencioné en la mañana, en esta excelente ciudad de Caguas, estamos aquí nuevamente. Cuando en el gobierno y en las entidades se habla de datos, se ha escuchado últimamente mucho lo de datos abiertos, open data. Y es que cada día hay una necesidad apremiante de tener datos y información. Y cada día se exige que los gobiernos y las instituciones demuestren su información y sus datos. Y entonces ha ocurrido que han venido nuevos movimientos y nuevas tecnologías que están permitiendo que los datos sean más accesibles ahora que nunca antes en el tiempo en que la tecnología está existiendo en el mundo. Uno de los conceptos, como bien les dije, es lo de datos abiertos o open data. Y es por eso que vamos a trabajar ese tema en esta primera parte de la tarde. Y tenemos el honor de tener a Steve Ellsworth, que nos va a hablar sobre Socrata para un gobierno de datos abiertos, el caso de Data.Pr.Gov. Steve Ellsworth posee más de 20 años de experiencia colaborando con organizaciones del sector público y privado para ayudarlos a transformar sus procesos de negocios, impulsar iniciativas de innovación tecnológica e iniciativas de retorno de inversión como resultado de la implantación de softwares. Su amplia experiencia incluye colaboraciones con el Estado Libre Asociado de Puerto Rico, las Islas Vírgenes estadounidenses, el Estado de Florida, Microsoft y Starbucks, entre otros. Steve es apasionado de medir las experiencias del consumidor, del liderazgo empresarial, y cree firmemente en el hecho de que todas las grandes ideas están alimentadas por datos e información. Estudió en Central Washington University y en Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. Vive en el estado de Washington junto a su esposa y a sus 4 hijos. Así que invito a que pase al podio, por favor, a Steve. Steve, please come to the podium.
So just to advance it. No worries.
Just to advance, you have to down arrow key and up arrow key. Just that.
Okay. Fantastic. Buenas tardes. I've really happy and privileged to be here today and have a chance to get to meet some of you outside earlier and provide a little bit better understanding for those of you who may not be familiar with the term open data, may not be familiar with the term open government, or other terminology that's used. Myself and my colleagues, we are a global company headquartered in Seattle, Washington. Just out of curiosity, anybody ever been to Seattle, Washington? You've got to come. You've got to come. It's a fantastic place to visit. There's no humidity, 0. But you should visit between the months of June and September. October through May, it's a little wet. Okay, great. So this is one of our iconic structures in the Seattle area, the Space Needle. This was built for the World's Fair a number of years ago. But a little bit about Socrata. So Socrata is a privately held company. We have received about $55 million in venture capital in the first 8 years of our existence. We have the opportunity to really help our government partners at a federal level, at a state level, and at a local government level, really capture an immense amount of regained trust with their taxpayers, with the citizens, but also really become more efficient in the way that they provide services and the way that those within government can make make decisions based upon data. So we do work with about 30 federal agencies, including the White House. So if you ever were curious and you wanted to understand who was going to go visit at any day, President Obama in the White House, all that information is actually publicly available on the whitehouse.gov site. So you can go in there and see, perhaps when's the last time that Ricky Martin decided to go see President Obama, as an example. We also work with the Medicare, Medicaid, the ATF, some agencies that may listen in on our conversations occasionally. But really where we see a lot of the initiative and a lot of the drive and the passion to change government is within the state and the local government levels. As you would imagine, there's a lot of bureaucracy tied up in the federal government. That starts to decrease as you work your way down into local government. But for us, it's all about the success of our partners. And we've had over 400 projects over the last 8 years with just a little over 275 government partners. We also have the opportunity to work with some non-government organizations. We do a lot of work for the World Bank as well as the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So another question for everybody here today. Before you looked at the agenda for what we're going to be covering and the great speakers that have already had an opportunity to address you all, who knew open data before you came in here today? Okay, thanks. And so how many of you have a mobile device, a cell phone? Okay, it's good, that's good. If my mom was in here, she just got her first cell phone a few years ago. So anyways, technology is not her friend. But the reason that I ask how many of you have a mobile device is that you are actually, all of you are experiencing the benefit of government opening data today. And I'll further bring that to a more realistic adaptation. How many of you on your mobile device look at it to understand what the weather's going to be like tomorrow, this afternoon, maybe for the weekend? Okay, great. So that's an example of government opening up their data. So that data, whether you have a Yahoo app or some other weather app loaded on your phone, that's actually data from NOAA that is being brought into these applications that's then being delivered to you in a mechanism that we're all familiar with and use. So that's one aspect of open data. Do any of you have an application on your phone? And apologies because I have not ridden a bus here on the island yet, but do any of you have an application on your phone that would tell you when the next bus is arriving, as an example? It's the same context there. Sounds like maybe there's a little bit of a requirement for having an application that will tell you when the bus is going to come so that maybe you could go stand inside until the rain passes, as an example. So we're about working with our government partners to bring them greater internal efficiencies, but also really get that information. It's really our information, right? As taxpayers, it's our information, and it's about bringing it back to the channels that we already use today. How many of you have ever gone to Google and looked for a piece of information? If you're a parent, maybe you've tried to understand what the certifications are for teachers in a school that you're thinking about sending your children to. If you're somebody who's a foodie, who likes to go out and have nice meals, maybe you wanted to understand what were the health inspection scores, for that particular restaurant. So we work with our government partners to really get the information into the channels that you're already using today. Because let's face it, I don't go to Data.Pr.Gov to understand where the road closure is going to be when I leave my house in the morning, right? I go use an application, like Google Waze, and expect that information will be there and help me get to where I want to, where it is that I'm going. So we've had a fantastic opportunity under an initiative that was originally driven by the former Chief Information Officer of the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico. And more recently, we've had the opportunity to partner with the Institute of Statistics, Jose Jorge and Mario on this. And so I'll ask another question here. Before seeing a picture of this right now, how many of you have ever seen this prior to 10 minutes ago? Okay. So not too many, but a few, which is good. So this is an awesome opportunity that frankly, the car's still not out of park. We have yet to really even take it down the road at 25 miles an hour and eventually, hopefully, at 65 miles an hour. But what you're seeing here is something that we do for many of our partners, and the easiest way to frame it is that it's a data catalog. So if you think of data that sits within various systems, maybe simply within somebody's desktop on an Excel spreadsheet, this is a way to bring all this information into what we would term to be a data lake, and then for information that should be publicly available to us as citizens, as taxpayers, governments provide us with this catalog, this mechanism to easily go and get that information on our own, really turning it into a self-service environment. Government partners also use this quite a bit internally. If you think of the over 100 plus agencies that make up the government here in the Commonwealth, you would imagine that, and some of you may actually work for those agencies, you would imagine that the ability to share information between agencies at times can be quite challenging. So our government partners use this same data lake to better share and remove the data silos, is what they're called, and really break those down and give people more time back to actually being proactive and using data to make decisions. So there's immense opportunity with open data. If I were to tell you that open data has actually, in the last 5 years, created over 600 companies worldwide, and those companies, fundamentally, their business model is based off of government data. And some of those companies have received venture capital in excess of $1 billion. So the opportunity, is immense, and when obviously the private sector decides that there's an opportunity to bring maybe a new service that government isn't doing today, they've jumped in and, on that. But the point being is that Puerto Rico has taken the first step here, and the Institute of Statistics has really taken a great first step in starting to bring some of that information out. Because when you do things and you bring information out, it brings people to the Commonwealth. It brings people thinking about maybe wanting to establish a business here or maybe in the U.S. Virgin Islands. Giving them the information that they need to be informed and make the right decisions going forward. But this particular slide here, there's a couple of good facts. Anybody who uses data, whether you be in the public sector or the private sector, on average you're spending at least 19% of your time on a daily basis just looking for that data, perhaps validating the data or going back and revalidating and making sure that it's correct. Open data also brings opportunities to governments who don't have budgets that continue to increase about how to take money out of those budgets. The example shared with you on the slide is one of our partners in the state of Oregon and how they were able to basically start to reduce the amount of money that they were spending to one vendor, and literally instead of $500,000, including the time of the person that it took to deliver the project, we're talking about a project that was delivered for, I don't know, give or take about $350. And that's the opportunity, again, that we give our government partners is to be more nimble and more responsive to the needs of the citizens that they serve. So a little over a year and a half ago, McKinsey, if you're familiar with McKinsey, they do a lot of market research, and they spent a significant amount of time, and you can see the key areas where they think there's the most economic impact to be had. But I think the number here that has stood out for some time is that they believe that there's a $3 trillion market for open data. And again, I think that ties back to the last 5 years where over 500 companies have actually started, and now their business model fundamentally relies on government providing them with data on a daily basis. So this is really the, why should governments open their data, and some benefits in doing so. By all stretches of the imagination, I think all of us that have grown up with government for some time have never really felt like our partners in government have been as transparent as they could be, and in some cases they don't necessarily hold themselves to the level of accountability that we would like to see as taxpayers, as an example. So transparency and accountability is a big benefit for governments in a variety of areas. Trust, right? So I didn't put it in a slide for all of us to look at this afternoon, but if you were to look at surveys that have been done, literally going back to I think the 1930s, you would see that over time, until where we're at today, that trust, public trust with government, just continues on a sliding scale down. And so the opportunity here for our government partners is to bring that trust back. It doesn't mean that it happens overnight. These type of initiatives are not a sprint for any government. This is a marathon. But when you do it right, you start to see the economic development opportunities and other great opportunities that come about. This is also about open data as the opportunity for increased engagement. If you think about the way that government works today, and I could have put up a slide here, I think no matter what government I work with, I feel like it's the same experience when I have to go get my license renewed. And it's a very painful experience in the amount of time that's spent, and maybe you go into one line and then you answer some information, then you go to the next line, and literally because you set aside half of your day, you may not even eventually get your updated license by the time you walk out of there. So it's really about making it easy for us as citizens and business owners, perhaps entrepreneurs, to work with our government. Operational efficiency, I talked a little bit about that earlier. I can't tell you how many governments are in need of retiring old systems that are costing them. Those of you that have worked with an IBM mainframe, as an example, governments are doing everything that they can to get out of those as quickly as possible. Those cost multi-million dollars a year to maintain, and I can't remember who was presenting earlier, but storage and computing power, all those things have changed dramatically since the mainframe was first invented. So if I move on to really the value framework of open data, regardless of if it's a state government, a federal government, or a local government, it really buckets into 4 pillars. One, which we talked about briefly, which is the pillar of citizen engagement. The development and delivery of services that are really focused with the user in mind. Have you ever gone to a website and felt like it's just the same type of great experience as if you go to Amazon or whatever shopping service you might use? It's not. Government has never designed their services with the end user in mind. That's starting to change, and open data is one way that you can help impact that change. Data-driven decision making. Just alone in my home state of Washington, I can't tell you, how many times we can't get the budget figured out. We can't get all these other things figured out because people think that they have the data. Five different people in the room, they all have 5 different data points that they're looking at. So, for us, it's about helping our government partners focus on the data. or not focus on the data as much, I should say, but more focus on the analysis and the insights that can be derived from that data, and then come to consensus on the right decision to move forward. Yeah, operational efficiency, sorry, I should take through these. So operational efficiency is also, one of those keys, going back to the 19-20% of time that's wasted in trying to access the information that you need in order to do your job. But it's also about changing the mindset, and instead of somebody picking up the phone, like my mom, who I love, but instead of somebody picking up the phone and calling and saying, I need this, it's providing them with the mechanisms to just go self-serve and get the information on their own time. And then the last pillar is economic development. And this one is something that has actually, in the short existence of the Commonwealth taking an open data initiative, has had a tremendous impact to the Commonwealth. I actually don't have the former CIO's slide, but within 6 months of starting to open up a number of data sets, it allowed the Commonwealth to secure about $75 million in federal grants. So that's, again, one of those other benefits of the more data that you provide out, the more opportunity that you provide back to either federal government to help provide grants, sometimes philanthropic organizations to provide money back into your local economy. So this next slide's a big one, and I'm going to just fill it out here as I talk through it. But if you think of just data in its pure form, it's just data at rest. It's numbers, it's letters, it's rows, it's columns. But what you have the opportunity to do, and what governments have the opportunity to do, is to bring this data into, bring context to it. Put it in a portal like Data.Pr.Gov. Put it into a dashboard to understand, how we're doing, against measuring against specific outcomes that we're focused on or that our citizens have told us that are important to them. And then the other aspect is really, thinking of your data as a platform. I talked about it earlier, getting your data into the channels of communication that citizens that you and I use already today. That's big. The connected ecosystem. You have a great group here that's called Code for Puerto Rico. It's people who don't get paid. It's people who come together, typically on a weekly or every other week basis, and understand what services the government's not providing today, and then they go about building services based upon the data that's provided through services like Data.Pr.Gov, and just release those out to everybody for use. This is just a visual to provide a little bit more context in the realm of making data useful for really everybody, no matter where they reside, whether they reside within government or certainly outside of government. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but this is a little bit of our architecture of how our platform works. If you just think of us as this layer that sits on top of any of the data sources that sit within a government organization. Again, could be a data set that's in an Excel spreadsheet on a desktop. It could be in an SAP environment. It could be in a SQL database. Doesn't matter where the data's at. We provide the layer on top of it and the connectivity to take copies of that data out and then really make it transportable and usable by anybody in any manner or form thereafter. These are some of the products that we bring to market for our government partners. So one of the leading things that we've done here more recently is that we've brought machine learning and data science. By the way, if anybody's interested in data science and wants to really work for a cool company, find me before you leave today. But so now, in the past, you had the opportunity to just take a photocopy and put rows and columns back out there. Now we've built in the capability for our government partners that it recognizes certain information within those rows and columns, and it says, you probably want to see this information in these particular visual ways. Where I live, where I work, over the last 2 years. And so we give that ability by you just putting the information into our platform. We also do a lot of financial transparency work with our partners. As you can see there, we have great partners in the ecosystem that you can download the apps out of the iPhone store or Android. And then, of course, a lot of our governments are putting externally facing dashboards out to measure how they're doing relative to outcomes. I wanted to thank you all for your time this afternoon, and I hope you're having a great day and learning a lot of new things. And at this point, I'll open it up for any questions you might have.
¿Alguien tiene preguntas? ¿Alguien? Was it perfect? So there's no questions. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's also one of those things where you follow lunch, right? You follow lunch. All right.
Okay.
So when the data gets opened up, do you just pull it and not clean it up? Or what happens with the data? Like, how do we access it? Does that make any sense? Like, it sounds really great, but I am wondering, what does it look like for me, the person that is going to see it?
So, a great question. So the way that we provide data back to you, or how you want to use it, is really through whatever mechanism you want to pull that information into. So my colleague who's with me from Socrata, Stuart, he's actually here in another half an hour going to walk through a light scenario of where using R with the Socrata platform, as an example. So there's any opportunity available to you. Every single data set that's loaded into the Socrata platform is provided with an API, an application programming interface. And for those of you that may have some developer skills in the audience, we provide a RESTful API. We also provide GeoJSON. So really, wherever you want to use the data, whether it's in something as simple as Microsoft Excel, or you want to take it into a more powerful tool like R, we give that ability for you to do so. Hopefully that helps a little bit. Okay, thank you. Fantastic. Thanks so much. Yeah, okay. I appreciate it.
Okay. Excelente presentación. Una vez más vemos cómo lo que estábamos comentando al inicio, que los datos abiertos son un hecho, ya existen, ya están disponibles. Los invito a entrar a nuestra página Data.Pr.Gov para que vayan explorando y aprendiendo sobre lo nuevo que tenemos disponible ahora, esa nueva información. Está en desarrollo, está en proceso constante, pero sin la ayuda de ustedes no será posible mantenerlo al día, así que necesitamos a todo el mundo colaborando. Vamos a tomar 10 minutitos de descanso y regresamos de inmediato a aquellos que quieran estirarse un poco y ir al baño. Así que nos vemos en 10 minutos.